Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits video. Alright, let's go ahead and let's continue with chapter 2, in this case part 4, from the book The World's Greatest Ghosts. This chapter once again dealing with haunted homes. This will pretty much wrap up this chapter. It's going to include some final segments associated with these haunted houses. Already the next segment that I was reading contains something that has been discussed both on Ghost Adventures and I mentioned it very briefly on my channel here a couple of years back. So it'll be good to showcase this final part of this chapter. I'd love to hear what your thoughts and opinions are there too. Lots of good segments and mini segments, and then I'll give my thoughts on there too. So without further ado, let's go ahead and let's talk about the next segment. You've heard of this name before. It's called Riddle of the Rectory. So here's what it states. A dark, gloomy mansion on the border between the English counties of Essex and Suffolk have been described as the world's most haunted house. And even though the building, Borley Rectory, burned down mysteriously in 1939, its legend lives on in strange happenings near the spot where it once stood. The 23-room red brick house was built in 1863 for the Reverend Henry Dawson Ellis Bull. As soon as he and his family moved in, they heard puzzling sounds at night. Footsteps and tappings were followed by bells ringing and then also voices answering. Ghostly chanting was heard from the nearby village church. Soon the disturbances took on a more physical form. One of the 14 children in the family was awakened one day by a slap in the face. Another claimed to have seen a man in old-fashioned clothes standing by her bed. A nun, a phantom coach and horses, a headless man, and also a woman in white were all reported in the grounds by passers-by and servants. In 1929, poltergeist activity began. Pebbles, keys, and mementos flew through the air for no apparent reason, and a cook told her master that a kitchen door locked each evening was inexplicably open when she arrived for work the following morning. Just before the Bull family moved out, newspaper reporters kept vigil one night and noted an eerie light in a deserted wing of the building. The Reverend Lionel Algernon Foister and his wife Marianne moved into the rectory in 1930, and the baffling incidences happening. Curious messages started appearing on walls or scraps of paper urging Marianne, get help. Mrs. Foister also heard a disembodied voice call her name, and she was later attacked by an invisible assailant. Soon after that, the couple fled for a more peaceful home. Ghost investigator Harry Price, founder of Britain's National Laboratory of Physical Research, recruited a team of volunteers to document exactly what was happening at Borley. They reported sudden drops in temperature of up to 10 degrees, curious incense-like smells, stones and cakes of soap thrown across rooms, and books moving as if of their own accord. A Benedictine monk trying to hold an exorcism in the rectory was hit by flying pebbles. When Captain H.W. Gregson bought the building, he renamed it Borley Priory, but the new name brought the Jinx home no better luck. In 1939, it was wrecked by fire. Several people claimed that as the flames raged, they saw a young girl at an upstairs window. Witnesses told the village policeman a gray-clad nun had been sighted slipping away from the inferno. Even though the rectory was destroyed, arguments about its ghosts raged on. Some said they were the spirits of a monk and a nun who had eloped from nearby Bury centuries before, but had suffered the traditional punishment when caught, decapitation for him, being buried alive for her. But London medium Helen Glanville claimed that during a 1937 seance at her home in Streatham, she was told that the Borley ghost was that of Marie Lair, a nun induced to leave her convent at Le Havre, France, to marry one of the Waldegrave families from Borley Manor. She was strangled by him in May 1667 on the site where the rectory was built. In 1943, excavations of the ruins revealed fragments of a woman's skull and skeleton 4 feet below ground, together with a number of religious pendants. Were they the bones of unhappy Mary, or were they, as some suggested, the remains of a plague victim from even earlier times? The rectory may be long gone, but its supernatural residents outlasted it for many years. Chauffeur Herbert Mays heard the thunder of invisible hooves as he drove past the shell of the building. During World War II, air raid wardens were called to the ruins several times when lights were reported at windows. As of late as 1961, car headlights, cameras, and torches all inexplicably failed to work during investigations at the site. Only a few miles north of Borley lies the Suffolk village of Polstead. There, too, the rectory is said to be haunted, and when a young Irish vicar moved out only after 5 nights in his new parish, the church put the 350-year-old building on the market, claiming it was much too large and expensive to maintain. The Reverend Hayden Foster, 35, arrived in Polstead from Dublin with his wife Margot and son Gerard in April 1978, and for 4 nights they all slept soundly at their new 16-room home. On the 5th night, the couple moved to another bedroom to accommodate guests who had traveled for Mr. Foster's induction ceremony next day. What happened that night was enough to make the family pack their bags in the morning and move back to Ireland. Mr. Foster told a reporter from the local newspaper, "At about 3 a.m., we were lying half awake when Margot saw the walls of the room change from being freshly painted to peeling damp old wallpaper, just as it might have looked 20 to 30 years ago. She heard screaming like a child's, but it wasn't Gerard. Then she felt as if she was being strangled or suffocated. She was trying to say the Lord's Prayer, but she couldn't get it out because of this overwhelming force. I felt, too, there was a real danger in that room. There is a definite feeling of evil in that place." Villagers in Polstead were not surprised when the Fosters left. They knew the legends of the rectory. Some said they had seen a procession of monks crossing the road outside its gates, their sandals 6 feet above the ground. Others recalled that the Reverend John Whitmore, vicar from 1795 to 1840, had held an exorcism service in the house. But the diocese bishop, Leslie Brown, had not been told the stories. He said, "I knew nothing about the rectory's reputation when the Fosters arrived. If I had, I certainly would never have moved them in." The previous vicar had said nothing to me at all, and when I asked his wife about it afterwards, she said, "Oh well, we got quite used to hearing footsteps going upstairs." The next segment is called A Lingering Loss. Peter Turner has had more than his fair share of encounters with the supernatural. Some people have seen the same ghost on more than one occasion, but Peter Turner's experiences were years apart and completely unconnected. The first happened in 1945 when Peter and a group of young friends were playing in a row of derelict houses in the Camp Hill district of Leeds, Yorkshire. The houses were awaiting demolition and provided a natural, if dangerous, playground for the local youngsters in austere post-war Britain. It was a cold November day, and Peter and his friends were playing in the house, which had recently had its floorboards removed, leaving only rafters and beams. As Peter walked across one of the upper floor rafters, he glanced out at the shell of a window. There below him was a neat little garden with an old man tending rose bushes in full bloom. There was no rubble, no bricks, no broken glass, just a well-kept garden with grass and flowers. The fact that it was impossible for such a garden to exist there at that time, still less contain flowers in full bloom in the middle of winter, didn't occur to young Peter. All he could think about was not getting caught. He and his friends knew what to expect if their parents found out that they had been playing in the derelict buildings. They rushed off, counting their luck as not being spotted by the old man. It was only later that it occurred to Peter how impossible it was for the garden to have been there. He returned to the house, but where he had seen roses and flowers, now there was just brick and rubble. 11 years passed, and Peter was still living in Leeds and preparing for his wedding, just 6 months away. Homes were not easy to come by, so Peter and his fiancée Pamela were delighted when they got the top floor apartment in a Georgian house at 10 Woodhouse Square, previously used as a nursery. One evening, Peter and 2 friends had been decorating the rooms. Feeling hungry, 2 of them nipped out to get a fish and chip supper. On their return, they found a 3rd friend outside the flat, too terrified to go back in after hearing strange noises and then feeling eerie sensations. With the excitement of the wedding, the incident was soon forgotten. But no sooner had the newly married couple moved in than more strange things began to happen. The door of a large cupboard would swing open, despite being secured fastly. Then footsteps would cross the room, and the living room door would also swing open. When Mrs. Turner was working in the kitchen, the cupboard door would swing ajar. There was the sound of shuffling feet and the feeling that someone was standing behind her. One night after the Turners had gone to bed, they heard the sound of their settee being dragged across the floor of the living room. When they went to investigate, nothing had been moved. The sounds continued until one night there was a tremendous crash. Just as if the old iron mangle they owned had been thrown on its side. They leapt out of the bed and, as usual, found nothing amiss. But that didn't stop the neighbors in the flat below complaining about the noise the Turners had made, moving their furniture late at night. The Turners found another home as soon as they could, but not before they discovered a possible cause of the mysterious noises in the night. By chance, they met an elderly woman who had been brought up in number 10. She remembered, she said, that when she was little, the house was reportedly haunted by a Victorian lady who constantly searched the nursery for her 2 children that had died there. And then there's a little mini segment that says arresting sights. Trainees at the police college at Bramshall, Hampshire are always on the lookout for troublemakers of the ghostly kind. A white lady haunts the galleries of the stately building which now houses the college. Those who have glimpsed her has also caught the definite smell of her lily of the valley perfume. Another ghostly appearance was reported by a security guard who challenged an unauthorized tennis player. The player instantly vanished through a wall. The ghost is thought to be a nobleman's son who met a tragic end. A third ghost is reputed to haunt the college. He is known as the Green Man and is said to be a previous occupant of the house who was drowned in the lakes of the gardens. And then the last segment is called Answer to an Old Man's Prayer. The young family were happy moving into their new home until the night terror filled their lives. The family, known only as Smith, had started to renovate their 90-year-old wood frame home in Rochester, New Hampshire. Work had gone well until Mr. Smith tore out an old cast-iron bathtub and put it in another room. From then on, their lives became hell. That very night came strange sounds and moaning. Said Mr. Smith, "I heard footsteps on the stairs and shuffling in the hallway. There was a pounding on the walls and doors slammed shut by themselves." The next night, Smith's 2 daughters were terrorized. The eldest, age 14, woke up in the night to feel strong, gripping hands pushing her by the shoulders into the bed. She said, "I was terrified. I saw a big, gray-haired man standing in the bathroom doorway. He was wearing a full-length robe, but I couldn't see his features. He just stood there in the doorway, then vanished." A few nights later, Smith's younger girl, age 2, ran screaming and trembling into her parents' room. She huddled in her mother's arms, shouting, go away, tell the man to go away." At first, the Smiths thought that the girls were having nightmares, but the terror returned night after night. They were so scared they slept together in the one room. In desperation, the family turned to ghost hunter Norman Gauthier, president of New Hampshire Society for Physic Research. Gauthier brought along a priest and a medium. Both priest and medium agreed there was a ghost in the house, and its spirits came from the bathroom. There, the medium made contact. "I could see him fully undressed in the tub. He was depressed and lonely. I felt he had a massive brain hemorrhage or a stroke. The old man wanted to know why the Smiths were living in his house and why his bathtub had been removed. The medium spoke to the spirit and found out that the old man's wife, Althea, had died 3 years before him. The medium told him, 'You are dead. It was a stroke. Calm down. You can see Althea, but you must realize that you are dead. You must accept it.' The medium turned to Gauthier and the priest and said, 'The old man can't accept he is dead and that his wife was gone.' Then the medium turned to the shaken Smith family. 'You won't have any more trouble. The old man has left. He just walked through the door.'" Then that's it. That pretty much ends this chapter here, chapter 2. associated with haunted homes, once again coming from the book The World's Greatest Ghost by Roger Bohr. Let's go ahead and let's talk about these final segments here. For starters, yes, indeed, there was the information associated with the rectory, the riddle of the rectory. This was, again, a spot that has been talked much about on Ghost Adventures and on other channels, and then also I mentioned it here on my channel as well. Very legendary location, definitely a place that still has many hauntings to this day. I mean, some of the hauntings here that the segment notated, I mean, go back decades, go back in this case to the mid 1800s or so. I mean, that's essentially when it was first starting, but I'm sure there was more associated with it. And then these hauntings involve poltergeist activity, which is, again, some of the most dangerous stuff. It was highlighted on some of the other segments of this channel, too. Interesting, though, that with regards to this location, there's another area as well. That's another rectory that the segment highlighted. It was called the Suffolk Village of Polstead, and there, that rectory is also haunted. Makes you wonder exactly why these both locations are essentially having these type of paranormal activities. Hard to say, but still plenty of unsettling stuff. I mean, the fact that you have shuffling of feet, poltergeist activity, you have, in this case, walls. There was a creepy segment there where the walls were changing from freshly painted look to damp old wallpaper. It instantly reminded me of Silent Hill. Remember that? The movie segment, whenever it showcases the walls deteriorating in real time and then changing into that rustic look from hell. That's essentially what it reminded me of here. Next segment, the Bus Far's Lingering Loss, was another segment that dealt with more paranormal activity, obviously involving houses. There, that situation was a little bit bad. Like, it was along the lines of, well, it was not too bad, but it was kind of eerie still, because there was apparently the ghost of a man, an old man who tended flowers, apparently a garden that was very well kept. And the fact that these kids, these youngsters, saw this in the middle of winter, again, when no plants should be existing there, it was almost fascinating to see that whoever this old man was, he made his presence known to them. They came back later on, clearly saw that this derelict building was still derelict, including that area that previously had all those flowers and garden was now the same as the other conditions. It was clear then that whoever this old man was, the specter of him, had created this illusion to showcase to them essentially what was happening. Crazy stuff. So I'm wondering then what could have happened there with that situation. It's a no-name ghost. Nobody knows essentially who he is, but there he haunts that specific spot. And then one of the last segments here involving the answer to Old Man's Prayer, that one was pretty freaky too. Here you had the situation where something involving an old man, apparently someone that was lonely, apparently his wife died. He became depressed. He had some kind of stroke or brain hemorrhage. It alluded to maybe he died right there in the tub as well. That he in turn was back at that house and he was there to haunt whoever the new residents were, in this case the Smiths and their two daughters. Very savage too, like to the point where he was grasping the two young girls and scaring the life out of them. And so the fact that they were able to make sure that he left to another location, that reminded me of an eerie situation I had there in Tyler, Texas. I've mentioned the longer version in some of my past videos, but I'll mention the short version here. There, I eventually walked into a seance. This was in an apartment building. And in that seance, they made contact with a man, a young man who had basically blown his head off right there in that very room, but his ghost lingers that room. He doesn't know he's dead, like he almost wants to stay there. And it ended with the ghost in the seance communicating with whoever was talking to it. He was stating that nobody pays attention to me. I'm nothing. That's essentially what he was saying. And then he left. But he left that conversation. I don't know if he left the room completely, but that loneliness of him reminded me of this guy as well, this old man, and the way he died, and then essentially he's still there as is. But let me know what you guys think. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.